Hello and welcome to The Appointment. I'm Pranjal Sharma. Joining me today is Dilip Chenoy, Managing Director of National Skills Development Corporation. Dilip, thanks for being with us. As we talk about 2015, one of the key issues which has been a challenge for India is skills. And for almost the last 5 years, you have been driving change in the skilling of India. Tell us, what are the milestones you've achieved so far?
Thank you, Pranjal. I think what the challenge in our context was that roughly about 5 years ago, industry said that they were finding it difficult to hire people for their growth needs. If you remember those time, industry was doing 9-10%, or the economy was doing 9-10% growth. The second thing that they found was that the people who are coming out of the system, whether it be from engineering colleges or the other training institutions, only 20% or 4% or 5%, depending on whose estimates you look at, could be employed. And the third, in order to grow, industry did not have any money to actually scale and skill. So arising out of this meeting, which is the Prime Minister's Council on Trade and Industry, it was then decided that a public-private partnership would be formed to actually address the needs of the employers in India. And that's what led to the birth of NSDC. So the first, NSDC is a very unique organization. It's 49% owned by government, 51% owned by private sector. The chairman of the board is appointed by government, 5 members of the board are appointed by government. And you're operating in a space where there are 20 other ministries with 70 different programs in a variety of different ways also operating. So the first challenge for us was that we could not supplant the government programs. So we could not enter the market by giving a grant-based programs, because all the other ministries would then say that you're competing for the same government money. How do you do it? So we actually ended up in doing a loan-based process where we gave entrepreneurs a loan to skill people and created kind of a market for skills. And when we started off in 2009, when we were launched in 20th October, everybody said, NSDC giving a loan for skill development, nobody will come to you.
But that's exciting, when you say a market for skills, because the intuitive thought is to say that skilling is the government's problem, either the state or the center, or the education departments should be doing it, or schools or universities. But when you say creating a market for skills, what does that mean?
So, the best way to do it is to give an example. So in 1982-83, when the IT industry was emerging in India, there were no colleges or universities or schools actually teaching IT. So then the industry itself took upon this themselves. So you had the birth of NIIT, of the AppTech, and they charged students fees. Or when the electronics hardware industry came up, you actually had a Jet King or somebody else come up and they charged students fees.
What you're saying is that the model for a market where people would pay to be skilled was there, but you took it to new areas. Is that what you did?
Yeah, I think what we did was the IT market also, the IT market was diminishing because then the government came up with the free programs. So how do you create a pull factor for people and actually create shared value? Otherwise, a free program, you give someone, the government gives a grant to a training organization to train X number of people, place Y percentage, and if you do that, you get money. Now here, there were trainees who were coming in for free. There was this training organizations that were actually training, and the evaluation methods became very complicated because everybody said, how do you ensure that the training organization is not cheating a student? How is the student getting a job? Are you tracking him for one year? Are you training him for enough hours? So it's becoming very, very difficult. So how do you create a system where industry starts hiring skilled people? Their interview success rates go up, the retention rates improve, the productivity rates improve. Today we are 1/10 of the US productivity in many, many industry sectors.
What are the new sectors where you've been able to bring this skilling model? Because IT is glamorous because there is a clear demand for it, but some of the more boring or arcane skills like plumbing or masonry, etc., where there's a demand from perhaps the construction industry.
So the construction sector was one of the most difficult sectors. And what we are finding interesting, it's a woman-led entrepreneur, Gayatri Vasudevan or LaborNet, who was actually found a very good model to make this sustainable. And if everything goes well, that one company this year will have a turnover of 60 crores. So this is the type of markets that you have created. The total amount of money, when I said we have committed 2,300 crores, the amount of money that we've loaned out is around 650 crores, and the revenues that they have generated are roughly the same. So you're finding a very interesting model that the cost of training and remember the 600 crores is a loan from NSDC.
Has the model changed? What is your current model?
So the model has not changed. What we have done is the government has asked us to introduce new programs like the STAR program, which is a Standards Testing Assessment and Monetary Reward program, because the second part, which we did not talk about so far, is that how do we get industry involved? And we're getting industry involved through sector skill councils for them to create the standards. So these 16 sector skill councils.
Yeah, I'll come to that.
Yeah,
but
let me explain the model. Sure. So now the sector skill councils have actually created the standards. And then in the STAR program, we were getting training organizations to get affiliated to the sector skill councils, do the training and get industry to certify. Because earlier, NASSCOM used to say only 25% of the engineers are employable. Now, NASSCOM is certifying the people who are coming out of this training ecosystem. They can't say we can only hire 25%. So the industry involvement has changed, and now more and more companies and more organizations are understanding that creating shared value of getting students to pay and getting them to actually industry to share costs. And what has changed over the last year, many companies are looking at CSR money to find organizations who can actually train people using the CSR money and coming forward. So we have a new element of CSR money. In the last 2 years, we've also approved the first Indo-Australia and Indo-UK joint ventures. We're saying foreign companies also coming in here. And third is that, earlier we said a minimum of 100,000 in over 10 years because we didn't have the ability to monitor. Now with the skill development management system, we can actually even monitor an entity that trains one person. So while we scale up, we might actually have more numbers and fewer numbers done by each entity as we go forward. So we are seeing 3 types of new developments. One is new sectors, like solar energy is the first proposal approved now. Wastewater is another one which is coming. These were not, we also have a very strong interest on e-commerce things because e-commerce is booming. Second, we are seeing new business models coming up with hub and spoke and really investments in centers of excellence.
You've been explaining to us about the various efforts of the industry. I want to come to that in a minute, but give me a quick, update on the model itself. So you give, as NSDC, you give seed funding. Then what happens?
Let me explain to you. We ask an entrepreneur to send in a 10-year model. And we say that the total CapEx and OpEx of that model, let's say it's 100. The entrepreneur has to get in 25%. Now, if it's a 10-year plan, he invests over the first 3 or 4 or 5 years. Every year he brings in 25%. Based on achieving of certain milestones, we actually give him a loan at 6%, 3 to 4 year moratoriums, 10-year repayment period. This is the earlier development finance model. We also may take equity, and we also may give him a grant if it's for some specific purpose. Now, every year, this person actually goes out and has to train a few people. Let's say 100,000 people in the first year, right? It grows exponentially. If it's 100 in the first year, it becomes 1,000 next year, 3,000 that way. So the moment he finishes 100, he has to get some revenue from that. The moment he finishes 100, we give the next tranche, then he does the 2,000, we give the next tranche.
What is the business model? How do they earn?
Now they earn from 3 different ways. There are some courses like welding for certain markets which are very popular. Youth are willing to pay the full fees. They might go up to 1,50,000 willing to pay. Some others which are very interesting job opportunities, let's say in the financial services or in the retail sector where a job is very close to that person's home, he's also willing to pay. Even in the construction sector, you've had people develop a model where the employee actually pays because his piece rate income goes up and he can repay that back. Some people have got the corporates to pay. Some people access CSR money. Some people say, okay, you train with us. Once you start earning, you get it back. And very interestingly, over the last 2 years, the Indian Banks Association, the government has introduced a vocational loan product, which has just come into the market. The first loss default guarantee was announced in the last budget. If that kicks in, then it will be a hugely market-based system for funding by the entrepreneur or by the individual or through CSR funding to get the employer to set it up. See, the challenge is that people can't scale because nobody has money upfront to create multiple centers, to create multi-skill training centers. So a lot of the investments earlier were going to the easy ones, banking and finance, retail, where it didn't require any investment.
But you also ran a campaign a few weeks ago where you were trying to inform the unskilled on how to join these skilling programs.
Yeah, the challenge here was, see, because we have a historical baggage, we prefer a degree without a job to a job without a degree. So on the average, a parent would like to send a person, the objective of joining school is to college to get a degree. After that, we don't know what to do. So we actually had to reach out to young people and tell them what the value of a skills certificate was. And what we had to do is, through a whole series of TV commercials and a TV serial called Hunarbaz, explain to kids the career path, because most parents think that the only careers are engineers and doctors and a chartered accountant, right? Banking. They don't know that photography is a career. You know, Three Idiots is a classic example.
But not just the young, even the, let's say, the mid-level professionals who may have been laid off, or who may have been made redundant because their skills expired and the industry moved on.
Yeah, that is a big thing. If you take the BPO industry, for the last many years, you had a person who used to answer your phone call if you say, okay, you want to speak in English or Hindi. Today, through IVR, that job is gone. So he's been in the industry for 2 to 3 years, and how do you train her or him to actually move on to a new role? Or if you look at someone who did standard advertising versus the new e-commerce digital marketing thing which goes in, and the whole jobs change. So we did a sector-wise demand-supply gap in 2008, where it came out that these 20 sectors or 24 sectors required about 34 crore or 347 million people. We have redone it now. And the amazing part is that many sectors, the jobs that existed in 2008 do not exist in the current form today, and many that were not even shown there, like in the solar energy or digital marketing or wastewater treatment or e-commerce, they were never in that list.
But today, as you said, you've done a fresh assessment. What is the demand-supply gap across all sectors in India?
So, when we first estimated the 20 high growth sectors, it was around 242 million. The current number is around 208 million in those sectors.
Is the demand?
Is the demand, yeah, because of two reasons. One, in those days, the growth rate was projected at 8 or 9. We've had 2 or 3 years of 5 or 4.5, 5% growth rate, and therefore the future projections have come down. Second, a lot of people are factoring in capital-led investment and productivity-led investment because they fear that there won't be enough people. So you have this very unique paradox that you have multinationals and other companies, because they are facing a shortage of people in their countries, creating processes and technologies that have a less dependence on labor and introducing that into India. So that's a huge challenge that we need to address as we go forward.
But the big Indian corporations and the global corporations who are manufacturing in India, there has been, even the IT sector or the services sector, one of the criticisms have been that they all blame and lament the lack of skills and enough adequate talented professionals, blue collar and white collar, but they never put their money in training them because they fear that if a company invests, it'll go to the competition. Does that problem get addressed?
See, that is a problem. That's a perception issue. In the IT industry, you have large corporates who train and keep them, but they are training and keeping them for 2 different reasons. Some use them as a bench strength to ramp up and quickly get into projects. Others believe that there was nobody there to train according to their needs. And the third is that they believe that, as you said, if they train, they went somewhere else. But now, as the manpower and training costs become prohibitive for a company, you're finding that companies are outsourcing that to other. And if Genpact is a leader, Genpact outsourced their training to NIIT at one level, but the higher level retained it. So as long as the training organization can prove to the industry that their cost of their training is much less than the cost of the money that they had spent in training, and the attrition rates are not there, then it will move to the training organization. And therefore, to facilitate that, we are getting the industry to collectively set standards and then get themselves to actually assess and certify the people and hire them. This is a huge mindset change that is required in industry. Industry is not geared to it because as industry, you want to get into the best college, hire the brightest boys and think that they will actually transform your company. But that's not necessarily true.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has put skilling right in the center of his initiatives to change India. there's actually a Ministry of Skill Development. You have been doing this work for the last 5 years. Tell us, what are the kind of challenges that you face which you would hope that the government would be able to help you address?
I think there are two sets of challenges as a country that we face. I think the challenge to NSDC will be subsumed in that. And the first thing that as a country we needed to do, we needed a coherent and collaborative approach to skill development. It somehow was not existing in the past few years, and very recently the previous government actually set up the National Skill Development Agency to enable that to happen. So the creation of a ministry is actually taking that one step ahead, and having a full-time minister and a full secretariat there is a very interesting and positive step. But the challenge is, how do you get all these different skill programs that are going out in the different ministry and get some set of coordination and cooperation and expansion?
And common standards, as you were referring to, at least in the private sector, within each industry, there are common standards.
So you're seeing that happen. The first thing what the ministry is undertaking is that there was a committee of secretaries on rationalization of schemes. So you'll see that actually coming out very, very soon, about at least getting common payment across different government schemes for the same type of effort and not different,
So can employment generation schemes and skill development schemes go together?
Now that is the second thing which I was actually saying here, is that there is a problem understanding the role of the economic job generation, the skill development ministry. So skill development and entrepreneurship has actually been tagged on. So if you see the Make in India program, they need a lot of entrepreneurs, right? So the entrepreneur development thing, which is currently in the Ministry of Medium and Small Industries, will be enhanced by other programs being done under the Ministry of Skill Development going forward. But the real crux and real challenge will be in budget 2015. What is the allocation to the skill ministry vis-a-vis the other ministries? Is there a new funding mechanism would be contemplated through the skills ministry to the other ministries, and a coordination and cooperation?
No, but is skilling only about funds, or is it also about coordination and fundamental planning of policies?
I think there are three different issues that we're talking here: skilling, job generation, and funding of skilling programs. Now, funding of skilling programs are currently being done through, like I said, there are 20 odd ministries with 70 different programs. The skilling ministry is trying to coordinate with them. Does the skilling ministry actually then channel the funds to these ministries, and because without funding there's just no kind of control? Or does the ministry launch its own program? So that's a challenge, something which we have to grapple with going forward. The second thing is that do you have common standards, which is actually what started off the National Skills Qualification Framework. And does the skills ministry lead this to the sector skill councils, or the sector skill councils will perform a different role? If industry, from a point of view of industry, if the sector skill councils are going to be not the primary body, then why will a Dr. Trehan or a Dr. Goenka or a Kamal Hassan or somebody lead that effort? So I think that is the second challenge we need to address, and what is the respective role of the sector skill councils going forward. And the main challenge which you are faced with is how do you scale, right? Because there are two views. One view is the view that was articulated in the Planning Commission, that we did not know anywhere near the 500 million number.
True, but that's the whole point. You said that you achieved cumulatively 3 million, and I'm sure for 2015-16 you would probably double it to 6 or so, but the gap is huge.
Yeah, so now that's what I'm saying. There are two views. One view is that the 500 million is an artificial number, we don't need that, and the Planning Commission and the IAMR had come up with some 260 million number, which needs to be done. But if you look at the census data, it just shows that there's so many young kids who will be available in the system. Either we skill them or educate them and get them a job, or they'll do something else. So the real challenge is, how do you create a simultaneous approach between those people in school, those people within the workforce, and those people who are neither in school or the workforce?
So what is the answer to this challenge?
See, the answer to this challenge is captured very well by the Prime Minister, and what he is saying is speed, scale, and sustainability. So we can't, there's not 1,50,000 crores a year for us to do the numbers that we want to do here. So we have to find government schemes that fund areas where the market cannot be created. in areas where market are being created like retail and IT and telecom, the government programs should not fund there. We should look at something different going forward, so that really difficult sectors, and the idea for the government intervention should be, how do we take the difficult sectors or difficult regions, northeast, J&K, left-wing extremist areas, and how do we create market mechanisms that create shared value so people understand and recognize the value of skills and strive for a skills certificate as they would strive for a degree.
But is the Sector Skill Council in a position to be able to hand out so many millions of certificates?
I think what we did 1.4 million assessments in 1 year, and we can easily scale it up to 14 million or 20 million. Scale up is not the issue, but the challenge is, will all the different sectors and all the different ministries work together to that level? Some people say this will be a monopoly. It won't be a monopoly. I mean, guilds or shrenis is an ancient Indian idea. It is not something new. We have to actually go back to our roots and develop something and far exceed it. I mean, Germany is the case. Germany, you go through the chambers of this thing. There's not a monopoly there. You go, Switzerland is the case. Austria is the same. Australia and UK are going down that route. So I think it's a very simple, non-financial intervention that industry and the employers can take. And if the training organizations demonstrate that those who are certified by their own organizations, right, actually have higher productivity and higher outcomes, it's a win-win for everybody.
That's a great and a very constructive thought, Dilip. Thank you very much for being with us. Really, now the onus is on the private sector and the employers, as you say, both in the government as well as the private sector. These steps hopefully will make 2015 and the future years much better for employment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.